I bought this £250 airbrush last year and have only used it to prime models and get the occasional base coat down. Today that's changing as I set myself a challenge to only use an airbrush. That's right, not a single regular brush is to be used in this challenge. How much of a model will I actually be able to paint using only an airbrush? This will not be a walk in the park. Well, let's find out together. I really don't want to end up stripping this model, or even worse, adding it to my unpainted collection that I never get around to finishing. So for this challenge I'm going to paint the Riptide battlesuit following the exact box art from the Games Workshop website. The first thing I've done ahead of the challenge is prime the model black, but you may be wondering why I've done that when the end model is going to be white. Well, I'm going to be doing a Zenithal highlight, which is a great way to represent light hitting your model. It's also a sneaky way of adding definition, considering we won't be able to apply washes or do highlights. To do a Zenithal highlight, I'm going to use white ink straight from the bottle. I'm quite nervous about painting this model, so I'm going to do the secondary weapons first. They're fairly low risk and very easy to do, and as we go here you can see it looks really great. There's a very smooth gradient, especially on the plasma rifles, where we go from really dark grey through to white as we get to the top. From there I'm going to move on to the drones, and the first thing to do is mask off the bases here so I don't accidentally overspray the bases with the ink. And then from there we move on to the main weapons, taking the time to get the gradient nice and smooth, and then we'll make sure we keep those deep blacks where they are. Now I've built up my confidence painting those bits first, so I'm going to move on to the main model. However, the universe must have heard me saying that I was confident, because the first thing that happened is air stopped flowing through my airbrush. But after a quick clean, we're back in action straight away and I get started on the model. Now I'm using the same technique as I used on everything else, but noticed on the larger flat panels that the ink is kind of pooling up. I took a little bit of time out to do some research on why that was happening. It turns out I need to add some airbrush medium to my ink to thicken it up a little bit. I really took my time to get the gradients smooth here, and I'm so pleased that I did. You can see from the bottom of the model that it's very dark, just as it should be. And then from the top of the model it's very white, so this has turned out exactly as I hoped it would. White ink is definitely the way for Zenithal highlights, and I'm really excited to use it on more models going forward. Next I'm going to concentrate on the black parts of the model, and to do this I'm going to need to mask parts of the model off. The reason for doing that is to make sure black paint doesn't overspray onto areas I don't want it to, but I've never masked anything before, so I don't really know what I'm doing. Let's try the masking putty instead for the rest of the lower body. It's taking me a while here to get the pelvis as well as the other leg done, but I do like working with it over masking tape, although I lack the accuracy that does come to me with masking tape. And that's the entire lower body masked off, and it's taken me a lot longer to get to this stage. The masking has taken an hour just to do the tape and use the masking putty. With that done, let's move on to actually getting the black paint down, and I'm going to use my old trusted Black Legion here. The first thing I'm going to do is mix the Black Legion with the airbrush thinner, but I'm still concerned the colour is way too strong, even though the consistency is now right. As I spray it onto the model here, it does look good and covers well, but it lacks a lot of that definition that I was hoping would show through from the Zenithal Prime. Next time I think I will just try thinning it down even more, or even try another black just to see if that makes a difference. Let's take that masking putty off and see how it's done, and wow, that is so satisfying to peel off. It's mainly done well, but there are a couple of splodges that have got through where I clearly didn't mask quite well enough. The bigger problem for me is coming in when I'm removing the tape. I thought I'd been accurate with the airbrush, but there's overspray all over the leg and there's a very clear line where the tape was, and I'm really not sure what to do about it. I'm really disappointed with that, but I feel if I try and fix it, I'll just make the situation even worse, so I'm just gonna leave it alone. Let's go ahead and move on to doing the main weapons, and I'm going to learn from the main body here and put a lot of masking putty on, being careful to hide the areas I don't want to be oversprayed. As an upside, the black has gone on really smooth again. Taking this masking putty off never gets old. although it does get a little bit stringy at times. The end result on the weapons actually looks really fantastic, and there are some areas where I've missed or not caught it quite right, but I don't think most people will notice once it's on the tabletop. I'm going to be upfront with you here, I am not having a good time with this challenge. I've just passed the 4-hour mark, and 2 of those hours have been spent masking areas off that I don't want to be oversprayed, and then 1 of those hours is things like cleaning out the airbrush, swapping colors. Like, it feels like a lot of admin that's happening at the moment. With that in mind, I'm not going to paint the small grey areas on the weapons, as I don't think it'll add anything and it will just take me hours to mask everything off and paint it up again. So moving on to the main model, there are a couple of areas that need to be grey. I'm going ahead and masking off the areas that I need to, mixing both tape as well as masking putty to try and get the best results with the masking here. I'm also lowering the PSI on the compressor so I can get in really close and reduce overspray. I've managed to improve with the grey compared to when I did the black, and it's actually looking pretty good, but as I peel away the masking, it's still not perfect, which I'm just finding really frustrating at this point. I'm going to go ahead and file this challenge under a failure. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had a really good time attempting it, and I feel like I've improved using the airbrush, but I'm over 5 hours in at this point and feel like if I was to use a normal brush, this would have gone so much smoother. The main areas that are making me think I can't complete the challenge are looking at the head as well as the sides of the jetpack. To get the head, I'd need to mask off all around it somehow and then spray the head red, while ideally not overspraying for the entire rest of the shoulders. The other thing is these circular things on the jetpack, and I don't know how to mask off a circular area like this in a smooth way where they would actually look good. So coming into this challenge, there were 3 main areas that I was concerned about. The first concern I had was that the model would look too flat if I'm painting the whole thing using an airbrush. And although that's true, the Zenithal really carries the model here, and I actually think the Zenithal looks really good. The second thing I was concerned about is how difficult it would be to mask, and I've got to admit, I've come into this challenge with 0 experience masking. I've put a few hours in at this stage, and it's not my favorite activity, and some areas were even more difficult than I initially thought they would be. The third thing I had on my mind was how long it would take only using an airbrush. I honestly thought it would be way quicker using just an airbrush than switching between an airbrush and a regular brush, but that is definitely not the case. Going forward, I'll definitely continue to Zenithal Prime, and then I'll switch to a regular brush to get all of the details from there. So would I recommend you give this challenge a try? You're probably expecting me to say no, but that's not the case. I actually think this technique would work really well if you had more organic looking models like animals or maybe reptiles. Feel free to have a go yourself and let me know in the comments how much you've used an airbrush in your own hobbying. Please do like and subscribe, it really helps my channel out, and in the meantime watch this video where I actually built the Riptide you've seen me paint in this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.